So I'm annoyed. So yesterday I was sent a video uh, by somebody that knows a little bit less about trains and railroading than I do. And he asked me, he said, does this video sound right? Does this sound like something that's possible? So he sent me this video. How one partisan's impossible traction derailed 40 panzer trains. And I thought, well, how bad could it be? I mean, it sounds somewhat reasonable from the title, but I don't know. Something seems off. And oh boy, was I right. This has to be one of the most egregious and awful AI videos of trains I have ever seen. Let me show you why. Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Newhall. I run JN Railroad Media here on YouTube. So, we got a lot to go over today. This video really piqued my interest, and it was so awful that I had to make something. I had to make a video in rebuttal to this awful AI slop. All right, let's get into it. So this video is on a brand new YouTube channel called War Chronicles. They have 75 videos, as you can see. And let's see how old they are. Oh, 2 weeks. Channel's only been up for a couple of weeks, it seems like. Joined in 2013. Oh, that's interesting. But they've only been posting videos for 2 weeks. And they've posted 75 of them. Now, I don't know about you, but it takes me a lot longer than an hour to make a video. It seems like just from all of these pictures here, some of them look genuine. Like I think I've seen that picture before. I think I've seen, that photograph before. But some of them seem AI generated, like this one. That looks AI. This looks like AI. The whole thing is just suspicious. So let's get back into this video here, and I'll show you what I mean.
October 3rd,
So
1943.
just based
Outside
on
Smolensk, occupied Soviet
the
Union.
narration,
Dmitry Volkov.
the narration sounds fake. It's either fake or extremely professional, which seems weird for like a YouTube channel that's brand new. It sounds like this guy's voice is AI generated.
Crouches in frozen mud.
And I mean, you'll see
brutal.
some of these
Soviet
pictures
partisan
seem
units
to be
in the Smolensk region
genuine.
and
I mean,
artillery run during Volkov, a soldier.
but it's hard to
The other
tell.
partisans have missed.
I can't find any odd things about any of these photos, so I think the photos are real. But I'm almost certain that the story itself is completely AI generated. It's AI narrated for sure. So let's get into what they say.
October 3rd, 1943. Outside Smolensk, occupied Soviet Union. Dmitry Volkov crouches in frozen mud, 50 meters from the main rail line connecting Berlin to the Eastern Front. Through binoculars, he watches a German panzer train thunder past, carrying 40 Tiger I tanks, 18 artillery pieces, and enough ammunition to sustain an armored division for 3 weeks. The train is moving at 60 kilometers per hour. It will reach the front lines in 14 hours.
So we're 38 seconds in and we already have a major problem. So the video gives the date as October 3rd, 1943, outside of Smolensk in the Soviet Union, and the train is traveling 14 hours to the front lines. The problem with this is that Smolensk was liberated by the Soviet Union October 2nd, 1943, the day before. Where's this train going? It's at the front lines already. This doesn't make any sense at all, given the date and location. So let's look at a map of this area as it is. So this is on Google Maps. This is Smolensk. It's in modern day Russia. This is Belarus, and you've got Poland, and Germany is here. So the train was heading from Berlin to the front line in the on the Eastern Front. So that makes sense. You would have a rail line. I don't know exactly where the rail lines are here, but you would travel across Poland, up through Minsk most likely, and go through Smolensk on your way to the Eastern Front, which ran approximately here at its height. So from Smolensk to Moscow, I've done the math here. It's about 5 hours by car. So 14 hours by train would make sense if you're going to Moscow. Trains were moving a lot slower. They also had to stop for fuel, for water, had to stop for other trains going the other direction. So that would make sense if the train was heading essentially here to the gates of Moscow. The problem is that the Battle of Moscow ended in January of 1942, a full year and a half before this video supposedly takes place. Not only that, but Smolensk is already liberated, so the front line is somewhere over here. I would assume just outside of Smolensk, since it was the day before. So this makes no sense. The dates make no sense. The location makes no sense. But anyway, let's continue and see what else they have to say.
The Germans are moving reinforcements east to counter the Soviet offensive around Kiev. The rail line through Smolensk handles 12 to...
I have to mention here, I don't know why the narrator said Kiev. It's Kiev. It seems strange. Where
Germans are moving reinforcements east to counter the Soviet offensive around Kiev.
Around Kiev.
The rail line through Smolensk.
Well, let's look at the map, see if that makes sense. So here's Smolensk. Oh, that doesn't make sense. Okay. So they're saying that the train is outside of Smolensk and they're moving supplies to Kiev, but that's south. So why they said the train was coming from Berlin? Why would it go all the way to Smolensk and then make a hard 90-degree turn and head south to Kiev? That doesn't make sense either. The facts are inconsistent, it seems. But let's continue. So the video goes on for a little bit talking about the specifics of that situation. So I'm going to skip a bunch of that. it is a 40-minute video, so I'm not going to show you the whole thing by any means. Um, if you want to watch it, it's still up on YouTube as of November 4th. We'll see if it stays up. Um, I will not be linking it in my video description or anything, but you can find it if you want to. Um, so let's get to the meat of who this guy was and what he was doing. So let's take a look.
The technique requires no explosives. It leaves no evidence. It's invisible to track inspectors. And it works by exploiting a single principle of railway engineering that everyone has forgotten. The difference between safe track and catastrophic derailment is 3.2 millimeters.
No, it's not. It, it that is such a gross misstatement. That doesn't it doesn't make any sense on its face. So 3 millimeters. Let me do the math real quick. 3 millimeters is a tenth of an inch. Now you look at track and tell me that it varies less than a tenth of an inch everywhere, any railroad track. I mean, you just have to go and look at pictures of branch lines. As a matter of fact, let me do that. Okay, you tell me that this track varies less than a tenth of an inch everywhere in gauge. You cannot tell me that this varies less than that. I mean, this is another video on YouTube, fairly well known one, um, but just on its face, the claim that a tenth of an inch of track or a tenth of an inch in gauge variance will derail a train is absurd. Just look at this. That doesn't happen. This is far worse than a tenth of an inch. I can guarantee it. As a matter of fact, the legal minimum is in the US, I believe, for class two track is an inch, a full inch, I believe. So the notion that 3 millimeters is going to derail any train that runs across it is absolutely absurd. And this was the claim in this video that they kind of base their whole story on, is that 3.2 millimeters in gauge difference will derail a train at 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 speed, and that just is not true. And it has to do with how railroad wheels are shaped and how railroad track actually works. So here is a diagram of essentially the science of how railroad wheels work. This is from a website called scientificamerican.com. Um, as you can see, railroad wheels are not actually flat; they're conical. So the way it works is the rail or the wheel sits on the rail, and it's the conical shape that allows the wheels to go around corners. So if you like this says, if you make a right turn, this part of the wheel will head kind of up the rail, right? So the wheel will move this way, and in turn, that'll make this wheel get a little bit shorter. And so when you have a conical shape, as you balance it further and further onto its narrow end, it will start to turn in that direction. So it's not actually the flanges that keep the wheels on the track, it's the shape of the wheel. The flanges are just there for when you go around a sharp corner. It keeps the wheel from just sliding off the track this way with centrifugal force. So they will just kind of push the wheel back closer to the middle of the track. So it's not the flange, It's the conical shape, and so as you can see, the wheels certainly move more than 3 millimeters each direction. Um, they have to in order to make them work. So the idea that railroad wheels will derail with a 3 millimeter variance is a little ridiculous because they have a lot more contact patch than that.
The Germans inspect constantly. We can't plant explosives without being spotted. What if we don't use explosives? How do you derail a train without explosives? By making the track wrong. Fedorov stares at him. Explain. Volkov pulls out a notebook and sketches a rail cross-section. Trains stay on tracks because the wheel flanges are guided by the inside edge of the rail.
Yeah, except that, like I just explained, that's not how train wheels work. Um, they stay on the track because they're conical, not because they have flanges. The flanges are just there to keep them from coming off of the rail when you're in a corner, when you're in a sharp corner. So no, this is not how track works.
The gauge, the distance between rails, is critical. If the gauge widens by even a few millimeters, the wheel flanges disengage and the train derails.
Yes, but the tolerances are wrong. If you widen the rails enough, yes, the train will come off the track. That's how it works. But I mean, you would have to spread the rails apart by a good probably couple of inches, not 3 millimeters. 3 millimeters is a tenth of an inch. No, that doesn't work like that. Okay, so this is the part of the video that is the most ridiculous out of everything that I had ever seen. Okay, just take a look. Take a
So we spread the rails apart? Exactly. But not by damaging them, by shimming them. What's shimming? We insert thin material under one side of the rail to tilt it outward. A few millimeters of tilt changes the effective gauge by enough to cause derailment.
This is geometrically. This isn't going to work. I mean, the shape of the rail won't let you shim the rail up enough to change the gauge of the track enough to make any sort of difference at all. It doesn't work that way. Let me show you. Okay, as you can see, ignore the measurements because the measurements will change based on how heavy the rail is. But the basic shape of a railroad rail, you have the head of the rail. This is where the wheel will ride. So if you can imagine, your flange might be here. If this is the inside of the track going this way, and then it gets narrow. It's called the web, and then you have the foot of the rail, which sits on the ground, right? So this will sit well, not on the ground, but this will sit flat on ties, and that's what keeps the rail sitting perfectly upright. So if you were to try to shim, so say the inside of the track is this way. If you want to try to shim this so that the rail gets wider, you're going to have to bring this up quite a bit before the top of this rail makes any sort of difference to the wheel. And not only that, but the shims are going to have to lift a ton of weight. They're going to have to be able to support the full mass of the train above it and the rail and not compress. So like if you were to use like thin metal, the thin metal is just gonna compress under the weight of the train. Most likely, it would probably just sink into the wooden tie underneath it, and also dent. So you would have to kind of prop the rail up, and then get a shim in there and just keep shimming it up and up and up and up. And that's without removing spikes. You'd have to remove spikes. There's all kinds of work you'd have to do to try to shim a rail up to get it to tilt, kind of tilt this way. It just it doesn't it doesn't make sense what they're trying to say that he did doesn't really make sense. Let me show you a little further. They talk about it a little more.
Inspectors won't notice because they're looking for broken rails or displaced ties. But the geometry is wrong enough to derail a train at speed.
No, it isn't.
How thin are we talking? 3 millimeters, the thickness of 2 coins. Fedorov looks skeptical. You're telling me you can derail a German panzer train with something the thickness of 2 coins? If placed correctly, yes. Plan is simple. Lift one rail slightly using the pry bar. Insert 3 shims under the base plate on the outboard side. Tap them in place with a hammer. Lower the rail. The shims tilt the rail outward by approximately 3 millimeters. This changes the effective track gauge from 1,520 millimeters to approximately 1,527 millimeters. Not enough to be visible.
So here again, the numbers are inconsistent. So they said it changes the track gauge by 3 millimeters, but then they said that it changes the track gauge from 1520 to 1527 millimeters. So it's 7 millimeters. That doesn't make sense either. Um, their facts are inconsistent, and I don't think this would work at all. Um, and there's at least for me, there's not really a good way to test whether this would work or not. I would love to do a test and see how this would possibly work, but I don't think it would. Again, the gauge of the track is not changing by enough to make any sort of difference to a railroad wheel. Um, this is just completely bogus and completely false. There's no way. So after this point in the video, it really just kind of goes over and over again, like how it works, and then it details some alleged uses of this technique. Um, I have scoured the internet and I haven't found a single place where this is confirmed anywhere else. The only place I have ever seen the word shim used in terms of railroad sabotage was in this specific video. I've never seen it used elsewhere. I've never seen it mentioned. I've never, nothing. There's nothing. Other online sources talk about using explosives or destroying different destroying switches and bridges and that sort of thing, but no shims. So I am almost certain that this video is completely bogus. None of it is true. Um, Another interesting detail I noticed is that some of the names that are actually all of the names that are mentioned in this video are names of current day actual Russian people that are somewhat notable. Like there was a cabinet minister and a soccer player and some other things. So I thought that was a little weird. But they also I couldn't find any places where those names were mentioned in like historical archives or anything. Um, like they mentioned the head of the partisan group in Moscow, and I couldn't find that name mentioned anywhere or even such a position existing. So I would love to hear some thoughts from military experts um, and see what you guys think. What the likelihood of this being accurate is. But anyway, that's enough for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of you guys. I know it's been a while since I posted a video. I promise I'm working on the next thing. It's another tab on my computer open right now. Um, it'll be about Lima Hamilton diesels, so keep an eye out for that. I'm hoping to finish it by the end of the year. We'll see. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.